Hey everybody, welcome back to Matt Goes to the Movies. And if you've been a regular listener, you know that this episode is going to be Mondays with Mando, and it's a big one. This is the recap of the season finale for season 2. And with that, we thought we'd bring a special guest back. You will know him from the Basement Binge. Harrison has joined us again. So Harrison, welcome.
Thank you for having me again.
And as always with these episodes, Rob is my co-host here, which has been a lot of fun. And I know we're both really excited to have Harrison here and talk about this episode because, guys, there's a lot to dig into that not only is for the world that the Mandalorian has created, there's a lot to dig into for the Star Wars universe in general from this episode and where it might go in the future. So we're really looking forward to talking about this. And Rob, we're going to start with you today and our 2-minute warning portion where this is spoiler-free talk about what you thought of this episode. So Rob, take it away.
Yeah, honestly, I was kind of worried that we might just have to cancel this week's episode because there just wasn't going to be much to talk about. Certainly not a whole lot happened, did it? I mean, no, there's crazy stuff that happened. Like we get certain payoffs on things that had been setting up all of this season. We get an ending that certainly sets things in motion for what season 3 will be, and some ways that this show will tie into the larger Star Wars universe that they're building right now. With this episode, you're going to laugh, you're going to cry, you're going to feel pretty much every emotion that's out there. As I've said before, I typically will watch this on Friday night with my family and just kind of enjoy it. And then I'll do a rewatch where I'll make different notes and things like that I want to make sure that we get a chance to discuss and break down. And just busy weekend for me. Didn't actually get a chance to do that until I was on my lunch break at work. And this is not an episode you want to watch on your lunch break in the break room at work because, man, you're just going to feel all of the feels. And, once again, just great writing, great characterization, phenomenal performances. Star Wars is fun again, as we've said. Everybody universally loves The Mandalorian. You're going to have different opinions about the 3 trilogies that encompass the Skywalker saga. You're going to have films that you've said you've liked. You're going to have films that you've said you dislike. And you're going to have films that other people are going to say they like that you're going to say is incorrect to like, and you're not allowed to like this one, or you're not allowed to dislike this one, or this one's overrated or underrated. We don't get any of that with The Mandalorian. It's just enjoyable, great, just fun every week. And this week was no different.
Awesome. Harrison, what are your thoughts here, bud?
Yeah, I think that I've been looking forward to recording this episode with you guys. I was actually really looking forward to your episode coming out, and then I remembered, oh yeah, I'm going to be a part of it because I feel like, and I'm also saying this for you and Rob, Matt, that I feel like I'm a little bit of an outlier with this episode. I want to like this episode so badly, and I just had a hard time with it. Normally, I rewatch the episodes. I watch them on Friday, and then I rewatch them in preparation for the podcast, whether it's my own or being on yours. And I kept trying to, and I just couldn't. And it's hard to kind of explain why without spoilers. But there was this episode, kind of like Rob said, had me through all the feels, but in a completely different way. Through like total high points of elation and excitement to like just disappointment and absolute frustration, and also like trying to figure out in myself why it is that way. So yeah, it's great. I'm excited mainly to hear what you guys have to say. So maybe I can work through my own thoughts about it because so badly let me say this. This episode is great. Great writing, great television making, great performances, great Star Wars, great integration into the universe that Star Wars is and what it adds to Star Wars as a whole in the galaxy far, far away, not just the Mandalorian episode. And I see all those components of it, and it should culminate together for something that's just phenomenal. But for whatever reason, for me, it just falls apart. and I'm just left having to admire the individual pieces that, for whatever reason, aren't sticking together for me. So I'm excited to maybe you guys can help me put those pieces together and appreciate it.
So, Harrison, not only, obviously, it's a blast to have you on these episodes and anytime we collaborate, and the last one was a lot of fun, but you and I had talked individually before this episode, and I was getting the feeling that you weren't necessarily a huge fan of this episode, like you said, the sum of its parts, so to speak. So I hadn't even talked to Rob about that. So I'll be interested to hear your overall thoughts. Like you said, this 2-minute warning portion, we're not talking spoilers, so it's kind of hard to say like why you feel this way. But I've been looking forward to hearing your exact thoughts on this episode because I knew that it seemed like you were leaning in that direction. And I've also had some individual conversations with Rob and some of my other friends about how we feel about the episode. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to just go back and forth. But I do enjoy this episode for the 96% that it's on my screen. There's some things that get to me, and we'll get into that. But I think this is a very, very good episode. I've been anticipating this, and it's weird, and I don't know if it's work or just, Christmas is coming up and everything, but, this aired on Friday. We're talking now, it's Monday night, and it feels like it's been 2.5 weeks. Like, I was so anticipating, getting on with you guys and talking about this that I'm like, it really feels like I watched this episode a lifetime ago already, and it's literally only 3 days, that I've been sitting on all of these feelings. So I'm just going to get past my 2-minute, my 2-minute warning here. And this is the portion of the episode, listeners, where if you haven't seen this episode for some reason and you haven't been spoiled and you don't want to know what we're going to talk about in depth, pause the episode, watch the Mandalorian season finale, and then hit us back and start off where you paused it here, because we're going to get into major spoilers. And if you guys don't mind, Harrison, I'm going to pose this question to you first.
Okay.
The one character that I want to talk about is maybe not the one that everybody thinks I'd start off with, but it's Boba Fett. And for me, I found it very unusual, regardless of what happens at the end, that he was very much a side thought in this episode to me. I really thought, this being the season finale, we'd get more of him, and he just kind of seemed like a placeholder to get them to where they needed to be, and then he was gone. That is one of my gripes about this episode. How did you feel about that? Were you surprised by his lack of involvement?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think that was one of the things that, like you said earlier, I've been trying to remember the things about this episode, and it feels like it happened an eternity ago. I can remember the end, and that's it, and everything else is like mush. So I appreciate you bringing up Boba Fett, because I think I was trying to read through my past notes here. When Boba Fett was introduced in an episode, I think it was just 2 episodes ago, the tragedy, he was a different type of, it was great to see him back. He was back in his armor. It was epic action. I think I was actually on the episode with you guys when we talked about that. Oh yeah, and the horrible camera angles.
Yeah.
But anyway, the character of Boba Fett was introduced, at least to me in my interpretation, it's very different than I think has been imagined for him. We saw a really loyal, almost tied to his own creed, so to speak, although he says he doesn't follow any creed, but he felt like he had a debt to Mando, and he was loyal to the point where they traveled across the entire galaxy tracking people down and went through all this work that Boba was involved in just because of the debt they had to pay. So what am I saying all this? It's just, I thought it was just an interesting take on Boba. He wasn't just like a bounty hunter that was just ruthless out there for that paycheck. It was a more, changed, someone who's experienced some things in the deserts of Tatooine that's maybe changed his loyalties. And then it gets to the end of the season, he's just like, peace out, I'm going back to Jabba's palace. He was just there until he was gone. And the way that I thought the character was going to go, I was like, what? He's gone so fast? And then he shows up at the end of the episode, and he's just going back to Jabba's palace, which I guess that's fine. I guess I just was expecting him to be I don't know, less bounty hunter-ish. I don't know. So I was, but to answer your initial question, I was sad. He like light speed jumps out of there, and I was like, that's it. He's not coming back. And I kept waiting for him to come back in the entire episode, and he never did.
Yeah, Rob, what are your feelings on that portion of this?
So it's hard to understand what his motivations have been throughout this series. We got that glimpse of him in season 1, and everybody kind of lost their minds about, okay, hey, this character that we all like, and we kind of covered it throughout, the recaps of this season. He's very much like Darth Maul in that he's got very few lines. Everybody thinks he's a total badass, even though he was killed off in a ridiculous and silly way. And yet they bring both of those guys back in future episodes of Star Wars lore. So we were trying to figure out, okay, so then we saw him at the beginning of this season with the episode where the very first episode of the season, and we saw him, and we're trying to understand what he's there for. So he shows up, he's back for his armor apparently. He makes a deal for it. He agrees to risk his life just because of his word. And then you're right, he just kind of pieces out. It almost feels to some extent. And then we see him just take over at Jabba's palace. Like, what's his end game? Like, it seemed like he was just kind of cruising around the galaxy in Slave One, just, picking up bounties, turning them in. Seemed like he was doing pretty well with that. Like, what's the motivation for him to now just say, all right, I'm a gangster. Like, I'm just, Jabba's dead, Jabba's gone. I'm going to go and I'm going to take out the guy that took over for him, and I'm just going to be the new Jabba. Like, I don't really understand what's in it for him. I don't understand why he makes that decision. It, to some extent, sort of cheapens his appearance to me in this series, because it feels like they brought him back in The Mandalorian just for the sake of spinning him off into his own series. I don't know. For as much as I've said that I do like this, and Harrison, you've said that you're kind of struggling with why you like parts of this, but overall don't feel like you like it. Like, I really did enjoy this episode as a whole. But if you want to sort of pick out certain things here and there, they're there. There's opportunity to pick some things out here and there. And certainly, we kind of jump from the beginning of this episode to the end with the end credit scene. Starting right with that, we're getting the Book of Boba Fett, which, if you haven't had a chance to listen to Matt Goes to the Mailbox that we recorded last week, we got a chance to really go into all of the crazy amount of stuff that Disney announced. And this was not one of the things that we were able to talk about, because to that point, it had not been announced. And they kind of dropped this on us that we might be getting a full series. It might be a limited, just like a mini series. We don't really know. I'm very confused about what they're doing with Boba Fett and why.
Yeah, one of the things for me is, Rob, you didn't quite say this, but some of the things that happened with Boba Fett here, and Harrison, you kind of alluded to it, feel like a betrayal of the character when we first meet him, because let's not forget, one of the things that he says to Mando is, like, I'm just a simple guy trying to make his way across the universe. He certainly doesn't seem like a simple guy at the end of this episode. You're basically what looks like taking over like a mob empire, and that didn't really seem to be Boba Fett anymore from this show. And I'm not saying that what they're going to do with his show isn't, probably going to be fantastic. I have no reason to doubt them at this moment. But to me, it felt like a little bit of a backtrack on what we thought Boba Fett was, because he did seem like, hey, I used to be a bounty hunter, but I don't know, however long he spent in the Sarlacc pit, certain things throughout his journey seem to have kind of changed him a little bit. And him just kind of bouncing out and then showing up there to just, be like, well, I run this now, didn't quite sit right with me. One thing that did sit, incredibly well with me, though, was his scene with Bo-Katan. And Rob, we talked about this a little bit, but some of the lines from her made me think back to the prequel trilogy, and I'll be curious what you guys think of this, because when she told him, he said, careful, my father wore this armor. And she said, don't you mean your donor? Obviously, referencing the fact that he's a clone. And she said, I've heard your voice 1,000 times. I thought that was really good. There was a lot of tension there, but it made me once again think about the prequel trilogy and all of the, the characters that have been affected in this universe based on certain events like the Clone Wars and even watching the show. Because obviously, if you've watched the Clone Wars TV show, you know that Bo-Katan has heard his voice 1,000 times and, seen his face, so to speak, because they all have the same face. So I really like that. And obviously, we get another fight scene with him, and his fight scenes have been nothing but top notch. So that was great. And I think that's maybe another reason why it was so disappointing is because we get a brief glimpse again of him just kind of throwing down, and then he's gone.
Here's the thing about that bar fight, though. It felt a lot like the fight with Ahsoka right at the beginning of the episode called The Jedi, where, before they actually figure out they're all kind of on the same side, they have to have a fight scene because they think that's what we want. This bar fight, it seemed unnecessarily like hostile, where, it just didn't seem like they weren't really even just having a conversation. They were just throwing insults at each other almost, or posturing. And it really felt like just a cheap way to get Sasha Banks to do a pro wrestling move in The Mandalorian and appeal to the WWE fans. Like that's really that on my second watch through, like I just went, oh yeah, this is exactly why they did this, because they haven't done that for her yet.
She got in that tornado DDT. She
I was talking to my brother a little about it over the weekend, and I was saying that one of the things that made that moment so difficult is that the character of Bo-Katan is just so cringy to me. And it's not the fault of the actor or anything like that. It's just, even in the Clone Wars, Bo-Katan, to me, and my memories of it, always kind of rode the line of gray in a way that I really didn't like. It seems on a moment's notice she could be for the good guys, in air quotes, and in another moment she was a bad guy. And I just thought her character was a little slimy, and that kind of makes her aggressive personality a little cringy to me, especially in that moment in the bar fight. But I did think the fight scene was sweet. I thought the action was well edited, well directed. It was good choreography. But I think that to me, it was bringing out those negatives of Bo-Katan for, I think, some things that are going to be happening in season 3. And so that actually really excited me. I cringed at the bar fight just because of the presence of Bo-Katan and the nature of that. But it got me excited for some things that I think might happen because of that in season 3.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, we're talking about how, like, right now, some of these things in this show have, we're thinking about the Clone Wars, we're thinking about the prequel trilogy. And once again, you get a mention of Alderaan when they're trying to capture the Doctor. And again, this just seems like it is setting up to include everything, because they really make it a point to talk about the fact that he's like the head of the cloning project, which we all know is very, very relevant in the sequel trilogy. And I feel like it just all ties together. But once again, this made me think of the Empire and the people that are with them that might just be doing what they are ordered to do, because when what is her name, guys? I am totally forgetting
Cara
it now.
Dune?
Yes, Cara Dune. I just drew a blank. When he's saying, I was on the Death Star when we destroyed Alderaan, and she's like, which one? He's like, do you think that's funny? Do you know how many millions of people died on those installations? This show has done a really good job of, Harrison, you just said air quotes, and I'll say that as well. The bad guys, making you try to see things from their perspective, because probably not all of them are essentially bad guys, so to speak. And, there's, thousands upon thousands of people who were wiped out when those Death Stars were destroyed, and, whatever else during these movies.
one of the things I've liked about particularly season 2 is it does do exactly what you were just saying in making you have to understand that there's more to it than just black and white. There's some shades of gray out there, and not every officer of the Empire is evil. Not everybody believes what they're doing is evil. Not everybody understands that they're, the ruling class of the Empire are Sith and evil and terrible and torture people and kill people and abduct and do all of these terrible things. For the longest time, World War II video games and Star Wars games sold really well and were really easy to do because they're very easy bad guys. The stormtroopers are all bad guys. Just waste them all. It wasn't until even really you get this a little bit with Finn in the sequel trilogy where he kind of goes, wait a second, no, and doesn't agree with what's going on, but there's more of them out there like him, and we're seeing that, and I really do like some of the shades of gray. But yeah, you could waste as many Nazis as you want in any video game and not have to feel bad about it. You can waste as many stormtroopers or Sith or whatever you want and not feel bad because these are black and white bad guys. So far, The Mandalorian is kind of showing you a couple different things. I mean, think back to different parts of just this season. We had X-Wing show up, and that's a bad thing. Like, whoops, no, here's part of the New Republic, and that's not good for our heroes. And then there was another part where, the TIE fighters show up and save the day. And holy crap, when's the last time you were ever excited to see TIE fighters show up and stormtroopers cheering? Like, we've never done that in the history of Star Wars. And yet we did both of those things in season 2.
Yeah, I totally agree. Harrison, what are does that dive into anything that you don't like about this episode, or is it more, are there just different elements that you aren't a fan of?
I think let me phrase this the right way. I remember on Friday when I was like, oh, it's Friday. It's the season finale of Mandalorian. And I was like I got all excited. And so I pulled out my phone and looked at, just opened up the Disney Plus app and looked at the episode, and it said like 43 minutes or 47. I don't remember exactly how long. It was 40 something minutes. I was like, that's it. And I think that for the first time, it's like I do with the podcast. Anyone who's listened, at the end of it, I do the hypothesize with Harrison, which is something I've never. I mean, when I watch a TV show or movie, you always think about what's going to happen. You have your speculations, but it's never something that I've put so much work into like I have because of the podcast, which has been a ton of fun. But I think it really changed the way I watch movies. I've never had so much weight going into an episode. I've never had so much personal investment into what might or might not happen. And I think that changed a lot about just how I feel about the ending of the season as a whole. Like the only note I have written down for my podcast that I haven't recorded yet is it's over, and I don't know what to talk about because it's over. Like I think that might be the biggest thing that's kind of just taking the whole mood down. Is it like it's it? Like all this, I've got to wait an entire year for anything else. All this stuff I was hoping that would happen or might lead to, it's over, and what's there is there.
You were hoping for Mace Windu. Right? You were hoping it was Mace Windu, and it showed up, and it was not Mace Windu. Although I will say, in the week after that aired, there was a ton of stuff online with people doing fan art or just different things with Mace Windu showing back up. So, you definitely touched into a nerve of some other people that were hoping for that. I think the character that does show up is probably going to be controversial as well with some fans. But I want to start at the beginning of this as far as just little things that kind of make you go, huh? The plan is basically to stop me if you've heard this before. We're going to get onto this Imperial base or ship, and we're going to do it by stealing an Imperial shuttle. Now, where have we heard that before? Oh, wait, literally everything Star Wars ever starts with stealing an Imperial shuttle. It's a little derivative for me.
I believe that was actually the plot of The Notebook as well, so that he could. So I don't know who came up with the idea first, but I think maybe it is Star Wars, but I've seen it used before. The
Notebook movie with Ryan Gosling? Like the romance movie?
Yeah, so you've seen it.
Yeah, is that what you're talking about? I don't want to
it was the plot.
if you are, it makes sense. Maybe the reference went over my head. Just wanted to make sure.
Yes, that is exactly the movie I'm talking about. But no, Rob, you're 100%.
You have to watch. You have to watch the DVD extras to see it.
Buy the Blu-ray, you bum. But yeah, no, Rob, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's almost every single Star Wars plot revolves around that.
Yeah, so just to kind of start things off, I mean, we kind of get that, but I will say, so shortly after that, we get our main credit scene, and you notice the main credit is not the standard main credit scene that we've been getting all throughout this series. There's definitely more of an epic level to all of the music. Certainly, as we talk about The Mandalorian as a show, season 1 and season 2, you really can't talk about this show for too long without getting into just how incredible the score is. And I think they really treated the score and the use of the music in this differently. They know that this was something different. They did a different end credit score as well. And I think it really reflected, you don't get that big, epic, sweeping, heroic sounding, kind of swaggering theme that we normally finish The Mandalorian with. It was more melodic. It was symphonic. I think it certainly reflected a lot of the conflicting emotions that people have coming out of this. But I actually looked some stuff up on the composer for this, and it's really amazing. His name is Ludwig, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the last name because his last name is spelled with an O and 2 dots above it. I don't speak whatever language that is, but his name's Ludwig Göransson. I'm going to try it. Ludwig Göransson, named after Ludwig von Beethoven, whose other work includes the Grammy Award-winning score for Black Panther, which, don't listen to Matt, Black Panther's a great movie. It's top 5 in the MCU. Matt doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to not liking Black Panther. But even Matt, you've got to admit, even though Black Panther didn't land for you the way it did for me, the score for it and the music and the use of music throughout it was incredible.
It's fantastic.
He also worked with Childish Gambino and actually produced, I believe, all of his albums, including the Grammy Award-winning track "This Is America." So it's kind of interesting to see he's somebody who's certainly got a real hip hop flavor to what he does, and he produces this big orchestral sounding, just awesome score. I'm glad that I took the time to look that up because, it definitely makes me appreciate him even a little bit more.
Yeah. Film scoring is something that I spend way too much time investing, not any movie, but just about any film, one of the first things I'll research is a score. Pretty much all I listen to on Spotify is film scores. I think I just have an overabundance of love for film scores. So Ludwig Göransson is one of my favorites. He also just did the score for Tenet. And every single time when it does a little intro and it says The Mandalorian and then it gives you the title, that's my favorite part of every episode because the music is just so good. But I agree with you with this season. I feel like they allowed, as the season ended, to let that awesome Mandalorian intro that we can all, it's all in our head, allow it to grow into the grandiose John Williams Star Wars score. And I wasn't expecting that. And I thought, even later when the Jedi does arrive, that we all know that was handled in a great way. I just really feel like, for me personally, the score in this particular episode took a front row even more than it normally does, and I just thought it was a great addition to the score of Star Wars.
More iconic score, the trilogy made by John Williams, and all of the great things we got with that. Thinking back to even Duel of the Fates from Phantom Menace, or the Mandalorian score. What stands out as more epic and iconic to you? Because I'm going to say it's the John Williams stuff, but I almost feel like I'm doing that by default. I don't really feel like I can defend it if I had to say why it was significantly better than what we get in Mandalorian.
Yeah, that's a pretty good question because the score in Mandalorian is really, really good. And speaking of, for me, this was a real high point for me in this episode. And maybe actually, if it's not 1A, it's 1B. but the score that accompanied the Dark Troopers was
that
was
was awesome.
unbelievable to me. It had that almost club-like techno dubstep beat to it, and for me, it's the first time really in Star Wars, like, say what you will about Vader and everything like that, but they did, for the short amount of time, they did an amazing job of making these Dark Troopers, and I hope we eventually get to see more of them. It was the first time that I was really, really intimidated by a Star Wars character on screen, because it really looked like they were about to do some damage.
Yeah, I think that's something that one of you mentioned on a previous podcast, where you're saying, like, when a stormtrooper shows up, it's almost not threatening enough.
Right.
And anytime throughout this whole season, especially the season finale, like, I was so terrified of those Dark Troopers, especially as the episode started to come to an end and they're punching their way through the blast doors. I was like, how is this going to go? Like, something is about to go down because they're threatening. And I hope that we get more of them for that reason.
Yeah, and too, it was go ahead, Rob, go.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they really had like a terrifying T-800 vibe. Like, if that was Schwarzenegger underneath there, you would have been like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. Like, this episode, when we get these Dark Troopers, it was really, so far, the most of like a horror style element that we haven't really seen before. I mean, these were definitely like terrifying as far as how they were presented. And yeah, I was in love with how they did that. I mean, they really did feel like a significant threat in ways that most other Star Wars villains, typically don't, at least as far as like your drones, your soldiers, your foot soldiers, your big bads. We certainly fear Palpatine. We fear Vader. We fear Darth Maul until he gets stupidly cut in half for no reason. But as far as just like your rank and file bad guys that are intended to be slaughtered, like you never fear them. I feared these guys. And when he's just like smashing Mando's head into the wall, like, holy cow, like, that guy, I mean, even though he's got the Beskar helmet, he's at least concussed. Like, his bell is rung for sure. Like, I feared for his safety. I thought he was going to get lumped up bad, and he did. And when he pulls out the flamethrower and the Dark Trooper is just like, meh, and throws him on the ground, I was like, oh shit, what are we going to do now?
Yeah, and it made them even more like, so they blow out of the air duct, and it made them even more intimidating. Like, I literally felt it in my chest when they were like, how many life signatures? 0. I was like, oh God, no.
Oh, yeah.
And then they just like, you just see the blips on the radar start flying in. And I was like, oh my, like somebody, like I was really nervous for the main cast in this episode. I was like, one of them's done. Like, these Dark Troopers, like, we're actually going to get somebody just being torn apart by these Dark Troopers. But the way that they made them seem like such a threat also really helped with the fact of how, we'll go into it, but how powerful the person was who ended up taking them out, because I think it just showed that level of where this Jedi is in terms of how powerful they are, that they just were able to wipe through them. So I think the fact that they made them so intimidating also helped tie into the fact of showing how powerful the next character was.
Right.
It's a good thing we had those Dark
served a lot
Troopers
more than just fear.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
It's a good thing we had the Dark Troopers, though, because once again, all of our characters that we're following and our heroes would definitely be dead if Stormtroopers were anything other than just totally wet, just a total wet noodle. Like, that's,
yeah.
They apparently do no training at all whatsoever. Like, just to be a Stormtrooper, you don't even have to be able to tie your shoes. Like, they just say, all right, here's your white armor, kid. Have a blaster, point it at the other direction. If you hit something, I'll be surprised. Like, it's, we'll get to it when we talk about, low points of the series or of the season so far. But man, like I was very critical of the previous episode with just how bad just the stormtroopers were at their jobs, how they were like almost intentionally bad at it. It this week isn't as bad as last week, but it's not far behind. So again, Harrison, if you're trying to look for reasons why it's okay to dislike it, there's reasons here. And even at the beginning, when Pershing is just kind of like answering their questions, they're saying, okay, so how do we get in? He's like, well, you do this. How many are there? There's this many people there. Like, no, you can't go that way. You have to go this way. Why exactly is he helping him? Did I miss something? Like, it didn't make sense to me that he was just totally cool helping them out.
Yeah, I think it's just like for me, I think it was just to show that he's kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say a coward, but like, oh, geez, you don't have to put any pressure on me. I'm just going to give you what you want. But it was just so like, okay, he's willing to help no matter what. But Rob, I can't remember if it was our episode or Harrison, the one that you joined us on, but I remember making a comment where it's so weird with the stormtroopers because they'll sit there and they fire away, trying to like, kill the rebels until they actually get them. And they're like, hey, drop your weapons, put your hands up. And they do it again in this episode. They're behind them on the bridge and they could have just shot them in the back and hold it right there. And like, what? You just spent all of this time shooting at them, trying to kill them. And you have them dead to rights, and it's the same thing again. They just, nope, never mind.
Once again, we have a complete lack of Imperial OSHA because none of these bridges have guardrails or anything of the sort, but it does allow us the opportunity to have, the Mandalorian crew, beam up with their jetpacks and take everybody out. That was a cool action scene, even if it really doesn't hold up to any scrutiny.
Yeah, that was pretty cool to watch them do that. So what, guys? Let me ask you, and Harrison, if you want to start, Moff Gideon. I maybe feel like I wanted a little bit more from him. He certainly seems like an intelligent guy, and who knows what we'll see in season 3. And we do get him in a fight scene. But I don't know. I find myself, and maybe that is a good thing because we are getting a season 3, but I just found myself kind of wanting more. And him overall in season 2, I'm left feeling a little empty, so to speak.
Yeah, I thought that Moff Gideon, anytime he was on screen, specifically the actor, just soaked it up. Like, he just demanded my attention whenever he's on screen, including this last episode. I thought he was great. I really love him. Anytime he's there, anything he's involved in, I'm like, this guy's a great villain. He's intimidating, but not stupid. Like he has an awareness of threats, and he understands what he's up against when the Mandalorian's coming for him. He acts with intelligence, but I feel like he was only included in the season when absolutely necessary. Like, it didn't feel like he was a constant part of the story. It was like, oh, every once in a while we got to remind you that there's an overarching villain of this season. His name's Moff Gideon, and he's got the Darksaber, and he has some Dark Troopers, and he's after Baby Yoda. Okay, now that we reminded you back to whatever we were doing on some other planet, So when he was there, he was great, but I felt like the way he was used, I don't think was as overall as it was in season 1, but I am excited. Hopefully we do get more of him, like you said, in season 3, because especially in this finale, I thought everything he was involved in, I was just like, this is a great villain that I really love to see.
Yeah, Rob, what are your thoughts?
I love the moment when Din opens the door to get to where he thinks Baby Yoda is, and boom, there he is. Like, you weren't expecting that. He opens the door, there's Baby Yoda, there's Moff Gideon, he's got the Darksaber on him, and it was just the way that it was presented and edited. It was just boom, here it is. Like, it was a real surprise. It wasn't like a jump scare. It was just something that you really got caught unexpectedly by, and I loved it. And that whole scene was really interesting, and you got caught off guard because Moff Gideon was just gonna be like, you know what, I've got what I want. Go ahead, you take him. And I was very surprised by that, and I thought, okay. And what was interesting to me was Din kind of says, you just keep the saber. He knows full well that Bo-Katan is only there for it, and that's what she agreed to come along with. And he's like, listen, just give me the cute little green cookie monster, and I'll take him home, and you keep that. I'm backing out of all my other deals. I thought that was kind of interesting, and of course it's just a trap. And yes, I absolutely love Giancarlo. I think he's fantastic. I think he should be every bad guy that he can possibly be because he's so good at it. I will say this: I found him significantly less menacing this week than I had basically the whole rest of the series. Every time he showed up, I guess menacing is really the only word you can use. I mean, he just dripped it. He just oozed that I have power. I'm a bad guy. I'm going to accomplish what I want to do however I can. And I have the ability to accomplish these terrible things that I'm going to try to do. And something, it just wasn't quite there as much for me in this week's episode.
Yeah, I would agree with all of those points. And Harrison, I'm gonna refer to you again first because you have watched the Clone Wars, and I want to stick with the Darksaber for a second here because again, I manufactured tension over the Darksaber after Mando defeats Moff, and Bo-Katan's like, "What happened?" And she can't take it from you, when it was already established in the Clone Wars series that has happened. So having watched the Clone Wars, I was kind of like, wait a minute, you're rewriting the rules for the Darksaber just to have tension in this scene. That fell really flat with me.
Yeah, I thought it was weird. I mean, let me say this. In the episode when it was happening, I thought it was hilarious. Like the way he holds the Darksaber up to her, and the way it's composed in the blocking where she's above him and his hands in open palm, and he's like, "I yield." I was cracking up. I thought that was hilarious. Great characterization for Din as well. But then after the episode ended, I was like, wait, why didn't she take it like she did before? Like the only reason that Bo-Katan had the Darksaber in the first place is because she accepted it when Sabine gave it to her. And I was like, what? Like it after the fact, I was like, this makes no sense. She took it before. That's the only reason she had it. And now she's like against that. So I'm confused by it. I will say this. It doesn't make sense to me, but I'm going to say the same thing that I said about the helmet thing earlier. Like, I remember when The Mandalorian first started, especially at the beginning of this season, and Mando doesn't take his helmet off. I was like, what? Like, Mandalorians take their helmet off all the time in the Clone Wars. Like, what is this dude? Like, like the rules are broken now? I don't know. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. But then, as the season went on, there was an episode, and in fact, one of my favorite episodes, where it addressed that exactly, and it was really important for the characterization of Din and his progression and his story arc, and I thought it was great. So it was like, okay, we're going to break the rules, so to speak, to further explain something later along the lines. And so I think the same thing is going to happen with the Darksaber. Dave Filoni was involved in the Clone Wars and in Rebels, so he wrote that part of it when Sabine gave Bo-Katan the Darksaber earlier. So clearly he's got a plan now. So I have faith in them, but I think maybe that's again one of those other things that just kind of breaks the episode for me after the fact. Yeah, in the moment it was great. I loved it. After the fact, I was like, this makes no sense. So yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, Rob, obviously you say you want to start the Clone Wars and you want to check that out, but without having the knowledge of the fact that's already happened with the Darksaber, what were your thoughts on that scene with, oh no, she has to battle you for it? I did find it funny, like Harrison said, where he's like, just take it. Like I seriously, I could care less. Like, good Lord. Like if I walked by this thing on the ground, I wouldn't even pick it up. Like just take the damn thing. What was your feeling on that scene?
I also laughed out loud. I mean, he's like, listen, I have my Muppet that I came for. We're going to go and I'm going to find him some fish eggs. I don't need this. Like, it has no interest to me. I'm not at all into this thing. And in the first time I watched it, just the way that Moff Gideon was like so excited to have to explain to him the rules of how the Darksaber works, it made me wonder if he knew that he wasn't going to win this battle, and he took a dive, hoping that he was too valuable of a hostage for him to be killed. And then he would create this situation now where he was going to have to give up the Darksaber, he believed. And so he was going to release it to Din, knowing full well that's what Bo-Katan was after. And now there would be conflict between those two, maybe giving him an opportunity to get out, escape, have something happen. And you can see clearly, he kind of like hides the blaster underneath his cape at one point, and made an attempt to get out. And then I didn't really understand why he tried to possibly take his own life. That to me, I didn't get that. And we've seen Imperial officers, commit suicide earlier this season. Actually, in the previous episode with Bo-Katan, we saw it. I didn't get that. I wasn't sure what that was about. It didn't feel on brand for someone like him.
Harrison, what are your thoughts on that?
Can you guys hear me? I thought it was. I don't know. It's hard to say. I felt like it was. To use the word you talked about earlier, it was manufactured tension. So I don't know. I thought it was. I mean, you need tension for your TV show. I don't watch too much TV. I mainly watch movies. The more I watch TV, the more I'm realizing you got to be able to draw things out season to season. And so in that way, I thought it was well done. In the moment, I was like, "Oh yeah, he's right." Like, and it just kind of like added to the menacing characteristic of him, where he just like, I don't know. But after the fact, it was like, this is just, there's something going on here that isn't fully realized or fully explained. And obviously, he ended up with the Darksaber in some way. So maybe it has to do more with that maybe he got the Darksaber from Bo-Katan in some way. So he knows all the ins and outs, and he kind of like, I don't know. I think I don't think he's just like an idiot who's just like there, like, here, let me tell you the rules of the Darksaber for everybody that doesn't know, like right. Exposition dump. I think that there's something that maybe I'm hoping we'll see in season 3, because it just is, I don't know. It's stepping away from it. I was like, this is kind of silly, but I'm trying to have trust in him.
Yeah, I don't know if him trying to take his own life there at the end, certainly I've read a couple things where if this is tying into the overall arching storyline of the Skywalker saga, which a lot of it appears to be, I think maybe he was trying to prevent the fact that he knows maybe some of the things that lead up to Episode 9 and the Rise of Skywalker. If he's been taking Grogu's blood and they've been working cloning, he probably knows a lot about what they're trying to do. There was another mention of people wanting order. So it seems like he was part of the blueprint, so to speak, of bringing the First Order to the galaxy. So I was maybe interpreting it as, whoa, if they for some reason are able to get things out of me, like our plan is going to backfire. They're going to be able to stop it. I don't know that I'm necessarily right, but I kind of got that feeling that maybe that's why he was willing to say, I'm just going to take my own life instead of letting you capture me. But so Rob, Harrison's gone a couple times here with some of these things, so I'm going to let you start. And I think we're at the point in the episode where we can certainly talk about the Dark Troopers are at the door, and then everybody stops, and we see an X-Wing fly by. Rob, what was your thought when the X-Wing flew by? Were you okay, I know who this is, or was it, well, maybe, but I don't think they would do this? Where did your anticipation start? Where did this scene take off for you? Because I know there was a certain point where I just kind of got overwhelmed, So I'm curious as to what your thoughts were when that X-Wing flew by and we started to see the reactions of, who's here?
So we see one X-wing show up, and we have every reason to believe that the person in there is most likely a Jedi that Grogu was in contact with when he was on the Seeing Stone. Um, I actually initially thought it was going to be Ahsoka again, and the reason I felt that is because we already have a live action actor, and it was a phenomenal episode. It seemed like it worked really well. It seemed like the characterizations worked really well. I fully expected actually when Din, kind of got the posse together to go save Baby Yoda, that she would be included. I kind of expected her, and we did get a little bit of that. We pulled some of these characters that we'd seen in season one and throughout season two that were introduced to us, and he builds this crew to go get Grogu back. I actually kind of half expected her to be there at some point. And I kind of thought, okay, she's going to show up. Our heroes are at death's door. There's these terrifying, cyborgs about to break this thing down and just smash them into bits. It's going to take a Deus Ex Machina device to kind of get them out of it. Kind of like what we saw with the ice spiders. When the Republic guys showed up and blasted them. So I kind of thought it was going to be Ahsoka, and I kind of thought that up until I saw the green lightsaber. And we had kind of theorized at the end of the episode with the Seeing Stone who it was that Grogu was reaching out to, who we might see. We talked about Mace Windu. And Matt, I think you and I, and actually Harrison, I think you were on that episode, we thought, would they actually, Luke would be around. He would be rebuilding the Jedi Order at that point. We thought maybe that would be possible. But I don't know that any of us really thought they would actually go there. So we see the dark cloak. We see the dark hood. The green lightsaber is there, and I'm thinking, are they? And then I still didn't believe it. I still didn't believe they were actually going to do that. Now, we know that they've done de-aging before for characters that had appeared, 30 plus years ago in other films. We've seen that 2 other times throughout Star Wars. So we know that they're willing to do it, but I still wasn't quite ready to believe that Luke himself was actually going to show up. And then when you see the black glove, too, on top of the green lightsaber, on top of the dark cloak, you have no choice but to accept that it is him. And man, oh man, what a payoff do we get? Luke is built up as this, this Jedi Knight and things like that throughout, Return of the Jedi. And then certainly in the sequel trilogy, we have every reason to believe that, he's a cross between, Gandalf and a warrior mage and all these other things. We have every reason to believe that he lives that existence before it all falls apart. But we never really see Luke Skywalker just absolutely kicking ass and taking out whole groups of enemies the way we do here. It's very reminiscent of the scene in Rogue One where Vader shows up and just completely mops the floor with everybody in his path, and it's awesome and it's terrifying. But it was good to see, Luke actually doing the things that we believe he was ever going to be destined to do. And I think certainly we talked about it earlier. These Dark Troopers were built up to be incredibly terrifying villains and very powerful and certainly a force to be reckoned with. And he goes through them like styrofoam, and it's awesome. And I've seen some people were critical of the CG and it was kind of weird to look at. I was okay with it. I wasn't personally bothered by the de-aging CG. It didn't particularly bother me. What did you guys think?
Harrison, I'll let you go. What did you think of this incorporation? Because I know we had a brief conversation, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think I've been holding this in because this is really the part where the episode really just fell apart for me. And I think that this is the biggest part where I'm an anomaly in the Star Wars fandom. At least that's what it feels like. I'm sure that there's other people, but in the general public, those that are making videos and making podcasts and the people creating content for me to consume about it, I feel like an anomaly, an outlier. Because I saw the X-Wing come in and I thought, it might be Luke. And let me say this, the way that they had it, where the camera or the little security footage is black and white beforehand, it was just great. I loved the way they did it. It was good suspense, waiting for the reveal, and then the green lightsaber comes into frame, and genuinely, my immediate reaction was excitement. I was like, no way, it's not Luke. They wouldn't do that soon. And then I saw the black glove, and I was like, it is. And so it was just like exciting to see Luke in that way. And then my mind immediately started racing, like, what are they going to do? De-aging? Is it Mark Hamill? Is it some other actor? Is it Sebastian Stan? Like, I just like started like crunching the numbers, so to speak. And then it got to the point where he comes to get Grogu, and then R2-D2 shows up, and that was awesome. When R2 showed up, I was like, oh, that's just the cherry on top of this great moment for characterizations that we all love about Star Wars. And then as the season's coming to the end and I'm watching the credits, I began to have a bigger and a bigger and a bigger problem with it. I don't have anything against Luke, and this is what I've been holding in to say. The way that Luke was portrayed, like Rob said, as like a Jedi Knight at the top of his game, you know, very reminiscent of the Vader hallway scene in Rogue One. We just see a Jedi with awesome power, and it was great. And I think my understanding of the consensus is that's the Luke that so many Star Wars fans have waited to see for years. They've imagined them and waiting for them for that Luke for years. And I thought that was great. The way that they handled the character of Luke, I thought was wonderful. But the fact that it's Luke and that now the Mandalorian is even more connected to the Skywalker saga than it was already starting to be, I think is what bothers me the most. Because one of the things that I loved about the Mandalorian, especially season 1, is that it wasn't part of the Skywalker saga. And whether this means that the following season is going to be a part of it or not, it just connects it maybe a little too much for me, where I really don't like it. Which I don't know why I didn't have that same reaction with Ahsoka, because it's the same logic. So I'm really like trying to work through it in myself, where why is it that Luke makes me feel like it's too connected to the Skywalker saga, where not so much with Ahsoka? I don't know. So it's this weird thing where I'm so excited that Luke is portrayed in this way that we've all waited for, and it's amazing. And I'm bothered because it's Luke, and he's in the Mandalorian, and the Mandalorian should be the Mandalorian, not Luke. And it's like these two opposing ideas in my head that in any given moment, either one is winning. And it's weird.
Harrison, I think maybe with Ahsoka is because even with so the prequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy and what's dubbed as the Skywalker saga, up until just this year, it's not like Ahsoka is really put together in that group. I mean, she really is, when you talk about her, she is a Clone Wars character, but obviously everybody knows who Luke is. And I don't know. I don't know if that's maybe why it holds a little bit more weight to you, about it being like, geez, can like the Mandalorian maybe just be the Mandalorian and not cut so far into, what we've already gotten. But I actually want to ask a quick question. You both mentioned it. It's very reminiscent of the hallway scene with Darth Vader in Rogue One. Have any of you actually watched the video of the comparison of those two scenes next to each other?
I didn't even know that was a thing, but I need to see it now.
Yes.
I feel like you should post that on your Facebook page.
Well, yeah. What I'm actually doing too is I'm posting it, and I actually have sent it to the two of you together as we're doing this episode, because it is absolutely wild how much they mirror each other, which I think is really cool. But it's something to see, and I will post that to the social media page as well, because it's quite something. But I have a little bit of a problem with the de-aging, because they had a really hard time. If you really watch it, the few lines of dialogue that Luke has is very, very out of sync compared to the way that the mouth moves on the de-aged face for Luke Skywalker. Now, I will say one thing: if we get more of Luke in The Mandalorian, Have you guys also heard the rumor where there's a huge swell from fans for Sebastian Stan to actually play a young Luke Skywalker for live action? Have you guys heard that?
Oh, I think it's perfect. He looks so much like him.
Rob,
Yeah.
have you seen them?
Yeah, I've seen there's if you get the right picture, where it's taken where both guys are taking, a picture from the same angle and have kind of their head tilted in the same position. I mean, they look like they're brothers. They look very much alike. And I think certainly Sebastian Stan is a very, very good actor in his own right. Certainly he's worked with Disney before. I think there's a lot of things there that make sense. However, if you decide to do that, you've already shown us Luke in the Mandalorian world as a CG de-aged character. It would feel weird to me that all of a sudden they're going to say, okay, well, we showed you Mark Hamill's face on somebody else. Now we're just going to completely undo that. I kind of hope we don't really get any more of Luke almost. As much as I want to see more in this world, as much as I want to see more of that time period, as much as I think there are absolutely fascinating stories to tell. If we do get that, I hope it is someone like a Sebastian Stan, and they just cast him, they do him as his own show, and they don't kind of mix and match. That feels kind of disjointed to me. But you're right. I think where there was a lot of articles that were written during season 1 about why the show works so well, and many of those articles focus on the fact that it was disconnected from the Skywalker saga. They didn't feel like they had to connect to the larger continuity. They didn't feel like they were stuck telling a story as a piece of that. They could just tell whatever story they wanted to tell with whatever characters they wanted to use. And throughout season 2, it slowly got more and more intrinsically linked into the Skywalker saga. And certainly when you have a Skywalker show up at the end of it, it's kind of hard to get much more linked than that. If you want to make a criticism about this episode, if you want to make a criticism about season 2 of The Mandalorian, you can absolutely say, now, I'm going to say I love the show. Matt, you and I spent a lot of time during these recaps talking about how we're just giving the keys to the kingdom to these guys and letting them do whatever they want because they've earned the credibility, because it's great television week in and week out, and it's something that we look forward to week in and week out. And we're not quite sure how we're going to make it to Christmas Day next year when we get more, and how excited we are for these other projects that are coming out. So let me just get that on the table. But if you want to make a criticism, it felt like season 2, to some extent, was kind of evolving into a commercial for every other new Star Wars show, and then making you have to go back and watch the 2 animated shows that have already been released and are now on Disney Plus. And it was an unconnected story, and now it's really kind of latching itself into the Skywalker saga, and certainly the end credit scene here, if you really want to break it down to that level, is just a commercial for another show that they're getting ready to give us, which I'm excited about. That's fine. Get me hyped for something that's going to be really good. But if you want to make that criticism, it's a fair criticism to make.
Yeah, I think maybe it's definitely fair to say that it might be almost too much. And as much as I kind of appreciate the fact that maybe they're trying to tie some loose threads together, you could also say, because I mean, I really think that this is leading to the explanation of how we got Snoke, why Palpatine returned in The Rise of Skywalker. But at the same time, I sit there and think to myself, well, maybe you should have done that in the damn movie then. And like not had to backtrack and almost be like, hey, look, we know you weren't necessarily happy with this, but we're figuring out a way to explain it. Well, maybe explain it in the movie that you were shooting and let this be what originally it looked like. Now, again, it seems like maybe over the past couple of minutes here, maybe we're kind of like dumping all over this property, and that's not the case, because I still will, I'll be there day one. I'll be reading message boards. I mean, God, it's a whole year. It's like, come on. Like, I can't believe it's that long to get something else. But at the same time, yes, as much as I would like to get some explanations, and I think they've done a decent job, part of the push of the Mandalorian was that it was like, okay, this is a completely separate story that still exists in this longer universe, but it's like, oh, here's characters that were doing something while our other heroes were off in their own adventures. Like, this is cool. I hope they don't lose that in season 3.
Something
It
that
feels weird. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say something that as you guys have been talking, I've been listening, I've been thinking about, as I've been recording my episodes, one of the things I've consistently talked on is how well Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have maintained a balance. When Ahsoka was introduced, it was awesome. But so much of it was to serve the story of Din and Grogu. I mean, it revealed Grogu's name, and it revealed a connection that the two of them had. When, I don't know, pick Boba Fett came back, it was furthering the story of Din and Grogu. And while all those exciting things happened and so many more this season, including making the Skywalker saga as a whole a little more tightly knit, it was all serving the characterization and the story of a cowboy and his puppet in space. And it's an awesome story. And it all of it. So I think that I've got to give them more credit, because even this episode, it's harder to swallow because Luke Skywalker showed up. Like, you say the name Luke Skywalker in Star Wars and suddenly everything is so much different. Like introducing Luke Skywalker, like you said, Matt, is completely different than introducing Ahsoka Tano, just because of who Luke Skywalker is. So I think that just like was a huge chunk of the episode that was really so small. And what it did was, again, further serve the story of Din and Grogu. Like, any Jedi showing up, it just happened to be Luke Skywalker, created a powerful moment that I was extremely touched by between Grogu and Din, where he took off his helmet. And that was awesome. And I really like that. So I think that I like to nitpick the little component, but if I give myself like to take a deep breath and I realize, they haven't given me a reason not to trust them. I'm clearly not the one involved in this roundtable meeting that's planning this whole thing out. I'm trying to piece the things together in my brain, and they're going to reveal things to me as necessary. I trust them. And I can see, even in this moment that's a little heavier than others, it's still serving the character of Din and Grogu. So I just got to give them that same trust that they've definitely earned. I think that they're still going to maintain that balance. I think maybe even proof that will be that way is that it is some kind of cheap, almost deep fake looking Mark Hamill. Like, I think that if this was a character that was going to be here a long time, they would have cast Sebastian Stan or somebody else. They would have let someone besides Mark Hamill do it. But if it's going to be like just a touchstone on the character and pay respects to the legacy that he holds, let's let the man who's made that legacy do it. And let's make it good, and let's make it a way that the fans will appreciate it. And then let's quickly get back to this story that everybody's here for, and that's the story of Din and Grogu. So I think, again, like I said, there's those two forces in my mind that are fighting between, and I think, again, the one that's saying that this is a good thing is winning right now, as we've been talking.
Yeah, so because we really haven't up until this point, because he's not in a lot of the episode though, but let's touch on Grogu and Din, because like we said, very early on in The Mandalorian, we learned that, okay, this is about these two characters, and there's going to be people that we meet along the way, but this story is about them. And it takes turns, and it turns into a father-son relationship. But it was never more apparent the absolute bond that these two formed than in this episode. And you get it with Luke telling him that he's waiting for permission to be able to leave, because he doesn't want to go, because he can tell how much Din cares for him. And then him removing his helmet to allow Grogu to like touch his face before, who knows? You would certainly think that wouldn't be the case, but in terms of story, we have no clue how long it's going to be before these two see each other again, if actually ever. Because that could be a real possibility if you really think about it. We might get more Grogu, but it might necessarily not be with Mando. I thought this was like the most like emotional part of this episode, obviously, and the most overall emotion I felt for these two characters, just because it somewhat to me felt like a real culmination of maybe we wouldn't see them together. As unusual as that, unlikely, I should say, as that sounds, there's a small part of me that thought maybe this was it. Like these two were actually saying goodbye.
There's definitely that possibility. I think throughout this last scene, we've talked about it throughout this series, but we see the kind of the chinks in the armor that Din has with regards to his belief structure of the Mandalorian creed that he was raised in after his parents were murdered. We see him start to doubt certain aspects of it. Certainly, meeting Bo-Katan leads him to understand that there's other ways of being a Mandalorian. There's things that are more important maybe than just that. And I think when he takes the helmet off, like it doesn't even really seem to me like he thinks about it too much. It's just because Grogu puts his hand up and he just pulls it right off. He doesn't even really think about it. And to me, I almost read that as, if I run into you again, I want you to actually know what I look like so that we'll recognize each other. And you can actually look at me and see me who I am, and not just through, the shiny mask. And when he takes his helmet off and Grogu touches his face and then he looks down and he's hugging his leg, that just gives you literally all of the feels. Like every single feel there is, you just get them all right at that moment. And if you don't, then you're a hard-hearted person, and we can never be friends. And I'll tell you what, like when he says it's time to go, and Grogu's starting to walk, like to me, I was like, oh, this is probably what it's going to be like when I take my kids to college. Like, I'm going to be a mess. I just know I'm going to be a mess. If I can't handle Din dropping Grogu off at Jedi camp, I will never make it when my kids eventually go to college. Like, it'll just be, I'll be a slobbering mess. I can already see it.
Yeah. I didn't have to deal with that because Brandon went off to college this year, and it's opening up a damn computer. So so
maybe virtual learning isn't all that bad.
Right, exactly. Oh my God, I can't believe you had to hit the power button. Like, but Harrison, how did you feel about how these two characters, left each other? And do you get the sense that maybe they won't see each other again? Because I have one little thought too after we get your reaction to these two saying goodbye to each other.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact word that it was said, but Din said something like, "I'll see you again, I promise," or something like that. And I think he actually said
something like that,
along those lines. And there's also just like the what's what I'm searching for, the real world reality that Grogu is a cash cow for Disney, and they're not just gonna like send him off and not cash that in anymore. So like, I have trust that like he'll still be there. But I've never even thought about the possibility that you guys presented that, maybe he still will be there, but he's not going to be with Mando. And that's like a whole nother level of heartbreaking. And I think that it's a very possible reality. Whatever happens, their relationship is going to be forever different. And for that reason, that was really them truly saying goodbye. Because it's different from that point on. They've gone their separate ways. Din's going to go after with his Darksaber, become Mandalore, and fight for that planet back and deal with Bo-Katan being Bo-Katan. And, Grogu's going to meet Kylo Ren here, or I guess I should say Ben Solo here pretty soon, and have to deal with his broodingness. Like their experiences are about to completely diverge. And when they come back together, I hope that love, of course, will still be there, but if they ever come back together again, it's just different now. And so to answer your question simply, their relationship, whether it's together or apart, will never be the same, and that is just it. It was going to happen sooner or later, but it's just heartbreaking in the best type of way, as that a heartbreak can be, but it definitely is.
Yeah. So I'll bring up this point first. And Rob, we actually, I think it was in a group text message that we had with one of our friends, but are we living with the realization that a-hole Ben Solo eventually kills Grogu?
Hey,
listen,
Mace Windu can show up and save the day.
Right.
That could still happen. Somehow, and we don't know the answer yet, but somehow Grogu did survive Order 66. We don't know exactly how. His memory was dark, but he survived it somehow. So we know that he had to have been around, and he had to have been receiving training when that was going on. It's possible that he could survive a second sort of Jedi genocide. It's certainly possible, but Harrison, I couldn't co-sign more what you just said, that it's hard to imagine that Disney allows a character this profitable to them to just go right off into the sunset, to kind of borrow a Western trope like the show is, and just never reappear. I mean, the amount of it, honestly, if you said to somebody, "Oh yeah, I'm excited for a new episode of the Baby Yoda show," like, everybody knows exactly what you're saying. In fact, I know people that don't even call this show The Mandalorian; they just call it the Baby Yoda show, and everybody immediately knows what you're talking about. It's unfathomable to me that season 3 doesn't include him in some way. It might be a few episodes. In fact, I'm going to just go ahead and predict that when we eventually get trailers, we don't see him at all. I'm just going to tell you, I don't think we see him in any of the trailers. And I know I'm kind of getting ahead of myself when we start looking forward to season 3, but it's so hard for me to believe that that's the last we see of him.
Yeah, I can't imagine it is. Just to what degree do we see him is certainly going to be the question. But that'll be, obviously we can get into that in some of these after show thoughts here that we're going to talk about. So, Rob, I'll start with you. What is your actual review of this episode? We've certainly said some good things. We've said some points that kind of stand out to us as not being overall positive. But what's your overall thought on this episode?
It's a solid 4 for me. Certainly. It gives me everything I want out of a great episode of television. It gives me most of the things I think I want out of a season finale. Again, there's some problems here and there. There's some things that when you go back and rewatch it and start asking some questions about what it is that you're seeing and why you're seeing it, you don't always have answers to, and that's what keeps it from being a 5 for me. Okay,
Harrison. You certainly seem to be the most critical, and not in a bad way, of this episode. But what was your initial reaction, rating for this episode, and has it changed at all from talking about this episode? What's your overall thought of this episode?
I think, to just explain the journey, when the episode ended, when it ended and before the Boba Fett scene, when those credits started, it was like a 4.5. And then the credits took a while to get to the Boba Fett scene, and then the Boba Fett scene happened, and I was sat there thinking about it, and it just immediately dropped down to a 2. And then kind of thinking about it before the podcast, it was just kind of sitting at a 2. I had hardly anything good to say about it. And then having talked with you guys, I think it's about at a 3.5. I still think that there's some, I would probably, well, I'm not going to say that, but what I was going to say is I'd probably never rewatch this episode again, but that sounds a bit drastic. So it's one of the weaker episodes for the season for me. But having talked with you guys, I think it's a great addition to the season. So I don't know. I'm still kind of a toss up. I said it's a 3.5. After the talking with you guys, there's more good I see in it now. So yeah, you guys definitely changed it.
Okay. I have to give this episode, to me, is almost like Rise of Skywalker. There's a lot wrong with it when you stop and think, but at the end of the day, I don't care. It was, to me, it's just fun. It was, again, I'm not going to lie, the feeling that I got of seeing the X-Wing and then seeing the glove and seeing the lightsaber and seeing that it's Luke. And then I probably got more excited, seeing R2D2, just oh my God, he's here as well. There's just too much sort of nostalgia there for me to say it overrides some of the things that, we can sit here and talk about it and be like, well, a lot of this doesn't work when you stop and think about it. And that's how I feel about Rise of Skywalker. But again, I just don't care. I had fun. There were certainly enough moments where there's a lot of emotions involved. So I would give this actually 4.5 for me, because there's just too much giddiness in terms of my fan reaction to really think negatively on this when I just look back at it. So I would give it a 4.5 for me, because I like the nostalgia factor of it. But Rob, you had some ideas about talking future content for the season. So why don't you kind of lead us in that direction of maybe start us off with a couple of your high points, and Harrison and I can certainly counter and talk about ours as well, and even get into some of the low points of what we thought of this season in general.
Sure. So looking at this whole season, Matt, I've had the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun, kind of recapping these and breaking them down and kind of speculating about what we think will come, and sharing with your listeners, some of the Easter eggs we found along the way to just kind of help enjoy the Star Wars universe just a little bit more, which is, I think, what a good Easter egg is always for. So I think to look at starting with the high points, I've really enjoyed some of the Easter eggs they've given us throughout. I've really liked that they've done a true redemption of certain characters or certain ideas, or maybe things that the films handled poorly or that the fans disliked that the films had done. I feel like the show has kind of gone out of its way to sort of correct or change the perception of. I think there's been some great, I guess I would call them guest characters that appear for a single episode and then we don't see them again. I think we've had some great options on those. There's true emotion and heart throughout this season. And we even get it from characters who don't speak or have the ability to show facial expressions. And in some instances, we get true emotion and heart from characters who just make noises that we don't understand. If you think back to the frog people in The Passenger and the Heiress at the beginning, when Frog Lady, which is, I guess, her official name, which feels weird to me. We couldn't come up with a Star Wars name for that. We're calling her Frog Lady. That feels weird to me. But when she reunites with her husband, we can't understand a word they're saying, but the emotion is still there. It reads. The music, we spent a lot of time talking about it, but man, what a score. And the use of music throughout, the variety of types of music that are used, the sound that's used. We talked there's electronic, there's dubstep, there's these big orchestral moments that are just fantastic. More than anything, Star Wars is fun again. And it's not controversial if you like or dislike the wrong film. Certainly you can say what you want about, certain films. And I know both of you guys like The Last Jedi, and that's just weird to me still. But that's okay. People can like that movie or not like that movie. And there's certainly people have strong feelings about it. But this show has made Star Wars as a whole fun again. And you don't have to worry that you're going to get a clunker of a movie and then you have to wait 2 years for something else to come out and hopefully see where that payoff is. Some really great action scenes, some truly funny scenes, and some truly funny just little moments throughout. And what I also liked that we saw is there's some compelling conversations that maybe go a little deeper into some philosophy and some different ideas than what we normally get from Star Wars. we kind of talked about it a little bit this episode, but you kind of start to get introduced to the idea that maybe not necessarily everybody in the Empire kicks puppies in their spare time. Like maybe they're actual people too. And maybe they think in their story, they're the good guys and the New Republic are the villains. We kind of get more of that in this. And obviously, it's hard to talk about the high points without getting to how many fun little cute moments we have with Baby Yoda and Grogu. Those were my high points. What did you guys have?
Harrison, I'll let you piggyback off that.
Yeah, well, Rob, you said about everything that I could have said. If I have to pick like a high point throughout the whole season, though, I would really say, as I've been looking at my past notes and just thinking about it, Chapter 11, the Heiress, Chapter 12, the Siege, and Chapter 13, the Jedi. Those 3 episodes are like the high point of all of Star Wars, I would say. That's maybe a little hyperbolic, but those 3 episodes, those 3 weeks, I just remember being so excited about Star Wars in a way that I did not expect the Mandalorian to be able to do, in the way it made me like the prequel trilogy more, in the way it liked the sequel trilogy or the Clone Wars or whatever. Just like what it did for my love of Star Wars, I was not expecting. On top of that, there were great characters. There were some of my favorite episodes. There was great action. There was great humor. The music was great. The visuals and cinematography and iconography and imagery was great. The characterization and character arcs and emotion was great. Like just anything that you could want in this format was there. And there was Star Wars on top of it. And it was really good Star Wars. And to use what you said, Star Wars, it was just fun again. And those 3 weeks, I remember when I sat down to record, like I was just so happy. I was just so joyous just because of the quality of entertainment that I was having about a particular galaxy far, far away that I care about. So yeah, there's many high points, speckled throughout the entire season and every episode. But if I had to pick one, it would be those 3 episodes in succession. I just loved.
Yeah, certainly for me, the score, Harrison, you mentioned this earlier in the episode. I'm much like you. I have a lot of soundtracks, on my Amazon Music account. That's what I use. And I listen to them a lot. I have like the entire X-Men First Class soundtrack. I've even like texted to Rob being like, oh, have you ever heard this actual score? Like you should listen to these ones. These are really good. So the score is obviously a high point for this show. I think Rob made a really good point of, that original Star Wars opening crawl is so iconic, but I believe in its own way, the opening to The Mandalorian has, really hit a certain level too of recognition with fans. Obviously seeing Ahsoka for me, it was a really, really high point. I thought she was played incredibly well, probably better than I could have hoped for, actually, based on how popular of a character she was, based on the Clone Wars. And even being a huge fan of Rosario Dawson, I did not expect her to really own the role like she did. I thought it was just perfect casting. So, to not repeat what you guys said, there's a lot of high points. I agree with a ton of yours, but do you guys mind if I say one low point and then you can piggyback off that?
Fire away.
So my low point is I just talked about how much I really enjoyed seeing Luke Skywalker, and it was pretty wild that, he's come to this television show. But one of the things that to me was a low point is, and it seems like it was this way in the sequel trilogy as well. Do any of you guys know how you could explain how do none of these people, how does nobody know who the hell Luke Skywalker is? Like we're only
it struck me as weird.
We're only 5 years removed in this universe from when he defeated the Emperor and destroyed the Death Star, but like nobody knows who this guy is. Like they literally ask, "Are you a Jedi?" No, I'm like. That is really, to me, and I spoke earlier about how some of the scenes in this show this season made this world feel really lived in. Like Rob, you've used that phrase before. But that is one of the things that really made it seem kind of as a separate like entity, so to speak, because I just don't understand how nobody knows who this guy is. It really baffled me. To me, that's a low point for me.
It did feel really weird, and I get that our galaxy far, far away doesn't exactly have a galactic version of Instagram where Luke can just sort of pop out his cell phone, take a selfie, felt cute, might just blow up a Death Star later, IDK. Like, I get that doesn't exist, but it does feel weird that nobody knows who this guy is. Like, maybe you've heard of him, like, especially the Mandalorians, because they have such a history with Jedi. Like, it does kind of feel weird, and also for Cara Dune not to immediately go like, oh, that's Luke Skywalker. Like, she was a rebellion soldier. Like, that's weird to me.
Yeah.
That's
Harrison,
I've
any
never thought
thoughts?
about that.
Yeah. It was certainly a low point for me. The other one, like for me, that would be a low point is I really thought we'd be able to see him more than once, but why did we not get to see Cat again? I thought Timothy Oliphant was really, really good. I thought he had a great presence. I was really expecting to see him again. To not be able to bring him back into the fold, so to speak, that would be another low point for me for this season, was only getting to see him once.
I did expect to see more. He was good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm reflecting on that first episode. That was a great episode. We had a crate dragon. Like, that was an epic, really big episode that just like, yeah, but nothing happened. Like, he got Boba Fett's armor. That's the only thing that's important to the rest of the season. And I guess that would be the low point, is like, for such a great episode, like, it's really kind of forgettable because it means almost nothing for the rest of the season. Besides Boba Fett's armor. So yeah, I really like that, and I would have loved to see more of that character as well. So if I had to pick the lowest point, it would just be the lack of him returning.
So
Yeah.
I've got some low points that I have here. I would have loved to have seen more of him. It sort of felt like they were setting him up to come back, and like I was saying earlier, I kind of expected Ahsoka to be part of the posse that was going to get him, and I kind of thought maybe we'd see Cobb Vanth again. I thought we'd see a lot of these characters potentially show back up to ride into town and help Mando take out enough of the Empire to get Baby Yoda back. Other low points that I have written down, and some of these are going to be repetitive to things I've talked about throughout the season, but when they had Grogu eating the eggs and it was played for a laugh, it felt weird to me at first. Like, it felt like that's not okay. Like, it wasn't supposed to be a moment of dark humor, and it just didn't play well. It was clearly intended to be funny, and it's adorable, and he's just mowing down on these things, but it almost was like, I want to say the week after that, like, they already had a pop vinyl of him going after the eggs. Like, it was already ready to go. Like, they thought this was going to be cute and funny, and people like had a really strong reaction to that. And they kind of had to come out and explain it later, be like, oh, well, they only need one. They only make one. Like, only one of those needs to survive. Like, they kind of had to get in front of that because people really didn't like it and had a very visceral reaction to it. So to me, the whole thing kind of came off as a miss. But yeah, as I'd said before, just absolute garbage stormtrooper like decision making, and just, it doesn't make sense. Like, they're just bad for the sake of being bad. Like, our heroes are clearly wearing plot armor throughout every time a stormtrooper shows up. The Believer episode, to me especially, was the worst of that kind of example. It was very clunky at times, despite the fact that Bill Burr was fantastic again, and there were some really great moments. And by the way, there's been some amazing memes that have been out there as a result of the scene where he shoots the Imperial officer. Like, that's been a lot of fun. There's been so many good points of that it just, the rest of it felt like a letdown. A lot of the episodes felt like fetch quests. We'd kind of talked about that before. And something we've talked about earlier tonight, are they trying to do too much? Was our little show about, the Mandalorian and his adopted son trying to find a good preschool for him, like, that's what it started out at, and all of a sudden it feels like it's getting bigger. It feels like things are about to explode. It feels like things are going to move in almost a Game of Thrones direction, with people vying for power and control. And to some extent, was this show starting to become a commercial for every other show and film that they're sending down our way? Which, look, we're all going to watch. We're going to watch all of this. Like, don't get me wrong, but it does kind of make you wonder. Were they trying to do too much?
Yeah, I could certainly see that, and I want to piggyback because I didn't mention it, and it was mentioned earlier in the thing, but I do want to point out one more high point, and that is the ability to make you see both sides of the rebels and the Empire. I thought they did a fantastic job of that in a way that Star Wars has not done that before. So I didn't mention that as a high point for me, but I did want to just bring that up, that they did a fantastic job making you see both sides of this equation, so to speak, and how, each side views themselves as the good guy, and each side really has losses that they take pretty seriously, because that was one of Maze's like great scenes where he's in, that mess hall or cafeteria, whatever you want to call it, just talking about all of the people that he lost on that mission, and how it's just eaten away at him every day since. So I thought that was a real high point for this show, is making you see both sides of that equation. But Rob, what else, what else do you have? Like, what are you looking forward to in season 3 here? Where do you think this is going? Almost kind of like Harrison's hypothesis, where what are you expecting season 3 to be? Because it certainly has the look that we might get something completely different than what we've got in season 1 and 2. It doesn't seem like it might be a small scope anymore. It certainly seems like we might be heading in a bigger direction.
Yeah, it feels like events are happening that our characters that we followed for 2 seasons are involved in, that are starting to get much bigger than just what they themselves are involved in. It's hard after this adventure is over to just imagine that, Din, he wipes the tears from his eyes, and certainly the other people in the room, you could certainly see, Cara Dune had a very visible reaction to Grogu leaving with Luke. So they kind of look around the room. Moff Gideon's so laying there, we should do something about him. Okay, guys, what happens next? It's kind of hard for me to see Din just going back to Mandalorian. Is he just going to start cruising the galaxy, trying to find a new ship and bring Pucks back, either warm or cold, your choice? Like, I don't see him going back to that. It's almost impossible for me to see him just picking that life back up. First of all, he doesn't have a ship, so he has to go find one. Is he going to do something about the fact that he is now in possession of the Darksaber? Is that going to create the conflict that leads season 3? Is he going to just kind of find a way to just take a dive and just give it to Bo-Katan? Because what is there now for him? I'm certainly very curious to see what happens with the Boba Fett show. But this season left in such a way that you have questions about what's going to happen, but you really don't know. Like, you really have no idea. I don't think that I know what next season is going to be like.
Yeah, Harrison, what are your thoughts? Where do you think season 3 could potentially go, or where do you maybe hope it will go?
Yeah, it's difficult to say. Something that's been on my mind a lot is actually part of the Disney's investors meeting, or whatever it's called, where Kathleen Kennedy was announcing all the Star Wars shows that are coming to Disney Plus. So the first one that she mentioned was Rangers of the New Republic and Ahsoka, and how both of those happened during the time of The Mandalorian. And she said something interesting. She said all of these will culminate in a climactic story event. which maybe that like just was a statement that I shouldn't be paying too much attention to. But I think that there's going to be something where these 3 seasons, The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and the Rangers of the New Republic, all kind of converge into one big event. I'm a little worried about that, to be honest, because I want this small story to stay small. But at the same time, I'm extremely excited because these characters are some of the Star Wars characters that I began to care about more than I ever knew that I would. So as far as like my hopes, what I think is going to happen in the season, I hope that we get a little bit more of Grogu getting older. You know, baby Yoda can't be baby Yoda forever. He's going to grow up. And one of the things that I always talked about in my episode in my podcast was how I thought it was interesting that the episodes of The Mandalorian put such an emphasis on how much Grogu was eating food, whether it was the fish eggs or it was some spider thing that got him into a bunch of trouble, or it was these blue little cookies that was adorable. Like, he was always hungry. And maybe Din is just a bad dad and doesn't feed him. But like, to me, it seems like it was an important detail. Like, he's growing. He's getting bigger. He needs sustenance. There's a change that's coming. So I hope for that. I also hope that we get to see Mando, or as in Din, become Mandalore with the Darksaber. Definitely want more of that. I think that's really interesting. I also think it would be sweet. It's kind of doesn't make sense now with what happened with Grogu leaving with Luke, but I would have loved to see Grogu become the first ever, or I guess not first, but the second ever Mandalorian Jedi. I just, I thought that would have been cool. And who's also, and whatever the name of that race is that he is, I just thought that would have been really cool. It seems a little bit unrealistic now. So yeah, I hope that they find a way, if they really do want to take these 3 seasons and have them culminate in a climactic story event, do that, but keep it small. Like kind of like you said, we talked about the Rise of Skywalker, but I like it. There's a lot of good things I have to say about it. But one of the biggest problems that I have with a lot of films, not just Star Wars, is that it can kind of get a little trite when it becomes the ultimate good guy versus the ultimate bad guy for the fate of the entire galaxy. Like, when the stakes are so big, they're so small. Like, when everything matters, nothing does. And I want the story to be able to stay small. And I trust them. So that's kind of my hopes. And Mace Windu, if he can show up, I really put a lot of money into that bet. I'd like it to turn a profit.
Yeah. I think I definitely think there is a definite substance to what Kathleen Kennedy said, because I have read articles now that, and now with Boba Fett, that these 4 shows will really, I don't know if either of you have watched any of these shows, but like with the CW network, where they have Flash, Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, it leads to one big crossover event where all of these characters come together. And some of these articles now that I have read have classified it as an Avengers level event that will, these 4 seasons will lead up to. And if I had to guess, based on all of the characters coming together, I feel like it's going to lead to Admiral Thrawn, just based on everything that could happen and the context that they can take from. I do feel like he might be the overall, I hate to say villain again, because we talked about that, but I feel like he might be the nucleus of what these 4 shows will converge on. And I really like him. I think he has a lot of great content, so that'll be interesting. But it will be interesting to see what, how they keep these shows connected, but also if they're able to keep them contained in a certain way so that it's not, it's not needed to watch every single, we will, but I still think they need to be somewhat self-contained. I think we need to be self-contained, so to speak, where it's not, everything eventually ties together. I think they need self-contained stories to keep everything interesting because, Rob, like you said, does it just become, is every show a trailer for the next show? That was one of the big complaints, not to talk about something else entirely, but that was one of the main complaints of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is fans felt it was a trailer for the Sinister Six and it wasn't a Spider-Man movie. I hope that's not where these shows, head in that direction, where it just feels like a trailer for the next thing.
But if anybody knows how to do that, it's Disney.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have earned their stripes, to quote Tony the Tiger. And they deserve to do what they're doing. And I just hope that specifically with Rangers of the Old or the New Republic, like I think that Thrawn would be a great villain, but not from episode 1. Like I'm really kind of interested in Trapper Wolf and that other X-Wing pilot that I forget the name, working with Cara Dune, trying to do all the things that a New Republic Ranger would have to do in an overwhelming part of the galaxy and time in the history of Star Wars. Like, it's kind of the little nitty-gritty details of some Ranger, showing up to work and doing whatever they do. That interests me. But at the same time, I think it'd be epic if somehow these now 4 seasons or 4 shows came together against Admiral Thrawn. That'd be cool. So I think they're, like you said, Rob, they know how to do it. They know how to do it right. They've got my trust.
Yeah, certainly. So which quick question too here. What would you say based on overall season 1 or season 2? Which one edges it for you guys?
Ooh. Oh man!
Another
is the hard questions, Matt.
Is that another episode?
Maybe season 1 because it just came out of nowhere, and when Disney Plus was announced, and we found out some of the exclusive content, we knew about the Marvel shows. We knew those were coming, and then. But The Mandalorian was the first show we really got that was going to be a Disney Plus streaming exclusive. And I think a lot of people were like, wait, what? So it's a show about no characters we know. It's not telling anything that, within the connected storylines that we already are familiar with. And it was a runaway hit. And I don't want to say it came completely out of nowhere because, as I've said before, Star Wars is probably the single most popular intellectual property on planet Earth. I'm just going to go ahead and say in the whole galaxy because I can't imagine there's anything on Mars or Jupiter that's bigger than this. And so I don't want to say it came out of nowhere, but I don't think anybody expected it to be this mega hit. And week after week, we just kept being more and more interested. We kept being drawn in by this bounty hunter who all of a sudden kind of, for no other way of putting it, falls in love with the target that he's supposed to turn over. And he does turn over, and he realizes that was a mistake and he'll never be able to live with himself and what he's willing to do to make that right. And that's really the story of that first season. And him trying to get safe and get the two of them safe as a result of that decision that he makes very quickly. Season 2 starts to get a bit bigger. So I think I'm probably just going to go season 1.
Harrison, what's your initial reaction?
It's hard. Luckily Rob went first, so I've had some time to think about it. Similar tone. If I had to pick one season, it's pretty hard. I would go with season 1 just because season 2 has more things that I don't like. Like when I reflect on season 1, it's just like it's all sunshine and rainbows. It was just epic. It came out of nowhere. And we all fell in love. And the season finale, I think, is one of the best. So if I were to pick specific episodes, there are episodes in season 2 that I love way more than anything in season 1. But there's some parts in season 2 that I'm still kind of ironing out. And so it makes kind of the season as a whole fall a little bit. I also think that, season 2, just in the history of TV shows, is kind of difficult. Like, for example, Stranger Things. Like, when you're at a point where you have season 1 that just blows up, and then season 2, you're trying to make it a little bit better. But before season 2 is even finished, you're already greenlit for season 3 and season 4. Like, it's this weird transitionary period where it's like, we took this super small show that nobody expected to be so good, and it's like amazing, and we've got to maintain that while also like allowing us to go bigger into more seasons. I think it's, and I think that's what we saw this season, and it was done well. I just think that like it can make the entire season feel a little bit weak because it's focused on so much more than just what's happening right now. But there's, like I said, the episodes in season 2 are some of my favorite Star Wars, period.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think for the overall consistency, season 1 definitely wins out for me. But there are some moments in season 2 and some episodes that, like you said, Harrison, completely trump anything that happened in season 1. It's just that season 1 is more consistent. I can't really look back at season 1 and think of anything that I would really say, I didn't really like that. It seemed like such a surefire thing every single week that the episode was good. I don't remember ever having one complaint coming out of season 1 after any episode I watched. So I would say season 1, edges it for me as well. But yeah, there's definitely some moments in season 2 that are among my favorite Star Wars content that I've been able to take in. So, guys, this has been. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, do either of you have an episode from either season that you would skip if you were rewatching from start to finish? Because I can't think of one that I would, and I can't even really think of one that I would heavily fast forward through.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, I really don't think I could skip one because with this show, and I'll certainly, give it a rewatch. And then when eventually season 3 hits, you'll definitely see me binging, season 1 and 2 again. It'll be interesting though to go back and maybe see, based on now what we've gotten in season 2, and see where things are going, if certain things maybe hit a little bit heavier in season 1, or hit a little bit heavier in season 2 based on maybe where we think it's going, based on what we know. So I'll be really interested to give this season 1 and 2 a rewatch eventually down the road to see if I still have some initial reactions like I did, or if those feelings are stronger, or maybe they're weaker, so to speak, based on what I know now.
Well said.
But guys, this has been a lot of fun. Harrison, it's awesome that we were able to get you on another episode. I can't believe we are going. It seems like a routine now, because obviously doing this for, especially with Rob, for 8 straight weeks, a whole year to go without any Mandalorian show is pretty weird to think about right now as we're getting ready to kind of wrap up this episode. But I know, Rob, you and I have certainly talked about doing the same thing here with WandaVision, and hopefully maybe Loki when that comes out. So, Harrison, you're hopefully always, want to try and jump on these shows when you can, because I know I have a blast when you're on. Rob's enjoyed it.
I love
too.
that.
So, hopefully we keep these things rolling. We keep these things rolling with the Disney shows, but Harrison, I do want to give you the floor here once again to any listeners that are with this show that maybe haven't checked your show out yet from earlier episodes. All this will be in the notes, but just remind them exactly what your show is, and give yourself a plug, because you certainly deserve it. Your show's awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So again, my name is Harrison. My podcast is called The Basement Binge. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean. The Basement Binge, that's what it's called. It's very similar to Matt's show now. I've been doing episodes on the Mandalorian, like I've mentioned, but it's also just I pick some films, some film series more specifically that I'm interested in binging, and talk about them and why I like them. So there's a lot of content coming out really, really soon. So yeah, the Basement Binge, wherever you get your podcast, I'd love it if you could download. And for those of you that already have, I've been seeing the numbers. I appreciate you coming over. Thank you for the support. If you haven't, please do. I'd love to have you listen. And Matt and Rob, you guys are always welcome on the show as well. We should definitely have you two jump over there. And like you said, I would love to continue with WandaVision because this has been a ton of fun for me. So thank you again for having me. It's been a blast.
Yeah, Rob will certainly, I'm sure, Rob, I won't speak for you. So hopefully we can find an episode maybe soon here that maybe we could jump on. And if Harrison, you got an idea for one that you're doing soon, let us know. I know, obviously, Rob is dying, like we joked about last time, to do The Last Jedi and to watch that movie again. He can't wait to dive into that pool.
Maybe forever ago, for those of you that don't know, the Basement Binge started out as a podcast between me and two other friends. There was three of us. And one of the ideas that we had from the beginning was what we called Binge the Cringe, where eventually, after we got a few episodes under our belt and we kind of had a routine, we were going to pick like either a movie that was really, really bad or one that was really, really divisive. And we were going to watch it. And after watching it, we were going to do a coin flip or pick straws or whatever. And one person was going to be the jury. And one person was going to be assigned to convince him why it's good, and the other person was going to be to convince him why it's bad. And it was going to be a litigation. But now that they're gone, I don't have anyone to do it. I think that would be hilarious to do with The Last Jedi. And I don't know. We'd have to figure out the semantics of it, but that would be a lot of fun.
Rob, that does sound like fun. I'm definitely looking forward to WandaVision. Look, it's WandaVision releases. I've got it down here January 15th. So,
that's so soon. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's coming up before forever ago. It seemed like we were never getting it, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot, okay, it's finally here.
Wow.
And for those of us that are going to be just all in on all things Star Wars and Marvel that Disney's just going to keep cranking out for us, it does feel like The Mandalorian Season 3 is forever away. But I think we're going to have enough to keep us in terms of just like nerdy stuff that we're going to be super excited about. I think there's probably going to be enough. And we're going to blink and all of a sudden, boom, we're going to have the Season 3 trailer and be able to dissect that. And we won't even realize it because we'll have had all of this just MCU content and other things rolling down the pipe. So, yeah, Matt and I had talked about continuing on with the weekly Monday recap show, but we don't have a snappy name yet for what the WandaVision recap, because nothing works just quite as well as Mondays with Mando. So we'll have to workshop that one a little bit. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to definitely WandaVision. I'm looking forward to recapping it for everybody, and hopefully, Harrison, we can have you on frequently.
Yes, I love that.
Awesome. All right, well, everybody, thank you. This has been a lot of fun to do this. Mondays with Mando's unfortunately coming to a close here with the season finale, but look forward to future content. And again, check out Harrison's show if you haven't, The Basement Binge. His notes will be in the show recap. And thanks again for listening. This has been a lot of fun for us. And until next time, this has been Mondays with Mando.